If you shall...
Hello. Welcome. Today is a very special reading stream because we are finishing a book. Finally. We are on the home stretch of the Illiad. And if I remember correctly, that means we have 2 books left. Two books, meaning 2 chapters, basically. We ended last week with the end of book 22, The Death of Hector, in which Achilles, for the sake of Patroclus, defeated Hector and then decided to drag Hector's body around on his chariot and did not show him the respect that a corpse fallen in battle should get. A lot of grievances. But we are on like I said, the last 2. We got the funeral games for Patroclus, and then we have Achilles and Priam, and that will be the end of the Iliad. And then we'll probably have another poll in the Discord. Yeah, we're finishing a book read aloud. After that, we'll probably have a poll in the Discord about whether we should move on to the Odyssey immediately after that, or... Make sure. Where is it? If we were to move on to A Study in Scarlet. Either way, whichever one comes first, the other one will come immediately after. So no worries about if you really want to see the Odyssey next, and we end up going with Study in Scarlet, the Odyssey will be immediately after that. And then we'll have to think of a whole another book to read. But that's the choice. That's the choice that we'll be making. But yes, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and lower the volume on the aquarium music as it is. Hopefully the rain isn't too loud. We're going to go with this, and we're going to go ahead and read The Funeral Games for Patroclus, Book 23. Achilles again mourns Patroclus. While the city of Troy grieved, the Achaeans reached the fleet by the Hellespont and dispersed to their own ships, except for the Myrmidons, whom Achilles restrained, saying to his warlike friends, "Myrmidons, with your swift horses, my loyal comrades, don't unyoke the teams from their chariots yet, but drive them past Patroclus and mourn for him as the dead should be mourned. Then, when we've sated ourselves with grief, we'll unharness them and eat together here." Then Achilles led them as they raised their voices as one in lament. 3 times in their grief they drove their long-maned horses round the corpse, and Thetis intensified their need to weep. The sand and their armor were wet with tears, so great a warrior was the man they mourned. And the son of Peleus was loudest in the strident lament, laying his man-killing hands on his comrade's breast. "Rejoice, Patroclus, even in the house of Hades, for I have kept my promise to you, that I would drag Hector's corpse here and feed it to the dogs, and I will cut the throats of 12 noble youths of Troy at your pyre in vengeance for your death." When he had spoken, he thought of a further way to defile Hector's corpse, flinging it face down in the dust by Patroclus's bier. The warriors removed their gleaming bronze armor, loosed the war horses, and sat in their hundreds beside swift-footed Achilles' ship. He gave them a funeral feast to ease their hearts. Many a sleek ox plunged under the knife, many a sheep and bleeding goat was slaughtered, and many a fine, fat, white-tusked hog was hung above the flames to singe, while blood pooled round the corpse, deep enough to dip the wine cups in. Now their prince, fleet-footed Achilles, was invited by the Achaean leaders to dine with King Agamemnon, though he was still grieving deeply, and they found him hard at first to persuade. When they all reached Agamemnon's hut, they told the clear-voiced heralds to set a great cauldron on the fire in hopes of tempting Achilles to wash the blood from his body. But he refused and made a vow. "By Zeus, the mightiest and best of gods, no water shall come near my head until I have laid Patroclus on the pyre, heaped up his mound, and shorn my hair, for I shall never grieve more deeply while I'm among the living. Let us yield to the necessity for food, however loathsome that prospect. But at dawn, Lord Agamemnon, order wood to be gathered, and provide all that is needed when a dead man enters the deepest darkness, so that Patroclus's body may be swiftly consumed and the army return to its toil." Patroclus visits Achilles in dream. Zag when they think you'll zig and do the Aeneid? The Aeneid. I don't know if I know that one by name. Like, nothing's coming to mind. They readily agreed to his request, and each of them sharing in the meal, they feasted. When their hunger and thirst were sated, they retired to rest. But Achilles lay sighing heavily among his myrmidons, by the echoing shore, out in the open just above the breaking surf. His strong limbs were weary from hunting Hector round windy Troy. Yet no sooner had sleep seized him, shedding sweetness round him and easing his heart's cares, than the spirit of poor Patroclus appeared, the very semblance of the man himself, with the same stature, eyes, and clothes, and it was his voice that spoke, saying, "You sleep and forget me, Achilles. You neglect me now I'm dead, as you never did when I was alive. Hasten my funeral, and let me pass Hades' gate. The spirits keep me out, the shades of men done with toil, who will not let me join them beyond the river, but leave me wandering in vain this side of the awning gate. And clasp my hand, I beg you, for once you've given me to the fire, I shall not return. You and I will never sit apart from our dear friends and talk as we once did, now that mortal fate has consumed me, that fate appointed for me at my birth. You too, godlike Achilles, are doomed to die beneath the walls of Troy. One more thing I ask of you, if you will. Don't bury my ashes far from yours, Achilles. Let them be as one, just as we were when we grew up together. Menoetius brought me to your house a child from Opoeus, because I killed Amphidamas' son, accidentally, in a foolish quarrel over a game. Peleus, the horseman, welcomed me to his palace, showed me loving care, and made me your squire. So let one urn enclose our ashes, the golden urn your royal mother gave you." Fleet-footed Achilles answered, "Why, when you are here, dear heart, do you come only to ask such things? I will see to it all, just as you wish, but now come closer, so that, if only for a moment, we might clasp our arms around one another, and sate ourselves with sad lament." So saying, he stretched out his hands in vain, The spirit vanished like smoke beneath the earth, gibbering faintly. Achilles sprang up in turmoil and beat his hands together, crying sadly, "There now! Even in Hades' house something of us survives, spirit and semblance, but no power of response. For all night long poor Patroclus' shade, his very likeness, stood over me, weeping, lamenting, saying what I must do." The building of Patroclus' funeral pyre. Achilles' cry woke the Myrmidons to further lament, and rosy-fingered dawn found them wailing round the pitiful dead. King Agamemnon, meanwhile, sent out men from every hut with mules to fetch wood, under the command of Meriones, attendant on kindly Idomeneus. They carried woodmen's axes and strong ropes, and drove the mules upwards to and fro on winding tracks, until they came to the high slopes of Ida, of the many streams. There they set to, the long-bladed axes felling tall oaks with a crash. The Greeks split the logs and roped them to the mules that tore up the ground, hauling them through the dense undergrowth down to the plain. The woodcutters handled the logs, as Meriones ordered, and stacked them on the shore where Achilles planned a great funeral mound for Patroclus and himself. When they had stacked the wood, the whole crowd sat and waited. Then Achilles gave orders to his warlike Myrmidons to don their armor and yoke the chariots. They did so, and the charioteers mounted their chariots. Then they set off, the chariots first, a host of warriors following on foot, with Patroclus in the midst, carried by his friends. They had cut off locks of their hair and thrown them on the corpse till they covered it like a garment. Noble Achilles walked behind, supporting the head, sorrowing for the peerless comrade he was sending to Hades' halls. When they reached the place he'd appointed, they set the corpse down on a platform of wood. Now a fresh idea struck Achilles, and stepping back from the pyre he cut a golden lock of his hair, which he had grown to honor the river god Spercheius. He looked out over the wine-dark sea and spoke anxiously to the god. "Spercheius, my father Peleus made vain prayer to you, vowing that if I came home to my native land I'd cut my hair and offer a holy sacrifice of 50 unblemished rams at the precinct and fragrant altar where your waters flow. The old man made his vow, but you have denied fulfillment. Since I shall not return to my own dear native land, allow me to give this lock of hair to the warrior Patroclus to take with him." So saying, he went and placed the lock of hair in the corpse's hands, and prompted them all to further displays of grief. Sunset would still have found them weeping, if Achilles had not spoken to Agamemnon. "Son of Atreus, the troops obey you above all others, and though they may go on grieving, send them away from the pyre for now, and let them prepare their meal. We, the dead man's closest mourners, will manage things here, but ask the leaders to stay." King Agamemnon, hearing this, promptly dismissed the men to their well-crafted ships, though the chief mourners remained, and piling up the wood to make the pyre 100 feet square, sad at heart they placed the corpse on top. They flayed and dressed numerous fine sheep and sleek shambling cattle before the pyre, and noble Achilles took fat from them all, and wrapped the corpse in it, head to foot, and piled the flayed carcasses around. Then he leant 2-handled jars of oil and honey against the bier, and groaning aloud swiftly threw the bodies of 4 proud horses on the pyre. Of the 9 dogs Patroclus fed beneath his table, Achilles cut the throats of 2 and threw their bodies on the pyre. Then he completed the grim task he had in mind, killing 12 noble sons of the brave Trojans with his bronze blade, and setting the pyre alight so the pitiless flames would spread. Then he gave a groan and called his dear friend by name. "All hail to you, Patroclus, though in the house of Hades. See how I keep the promises I made. 12 noble sons of brave Trojans the fire will devour with you, but the dogs, not the flames, shall feed on Hector, son of Priam." Yet despite his threats, no dogs defiled Hector's corpse, for Aphrodite, Zeus's daughter, kept them from him, night and day, and anointed him with sweet ambrosial oil of roses, so Achilles would not tear the flesh dragging the corpse about. And Phoebus Apollo drew a dark cloud down from sky to earth, and cloaked the whole place where the dead man lay, to prevent the sun shriveling the flesh and sinews of his limbs. The funeral mound. Now the pyre of dead Patroclus would not burn. Fleet-footed Achilles took thought, then standing back from the pyre prayed to the winds, Boreas the north wind, Zephyrus the west, promising them fine offerings. Pouring libations from a golden cup, he begged them fervently to blow, so the wood might kindle and the bodies might burn. Iris heard his prayer and flew swiftly to give the winds his message. They were feasting together in Zephyrus's house, lord of the western gales, when Iris halted on his stone threshold. They sprang up when they saw her and called her to sit beside them. But she refused, saying, "I can't. I must return to Ocean's stream, and the land of the Ethiopians, where they are sacrificing to the immortals and share in their sacred feast. But Achilles asks for you, Boreas, and you, wild Zephyr, and promises fine offerings if you'll kindle the pyre where Patroclus lies, for whom the Achaeans grieve." Then she left while the winds rose with a roar, driving the clouds in rout before them. Soon they were out at sea, stirring the swelling waves with their stormy blast. Reaching the fertile land of Troy, they attacked the pyre, raising a great column of roaring fire. As one, their blast beat on the flames, howling all night long, and all night long swift Achilles drew wine from a golden bowl in a two-handled cup, and poured it on the ground, wetting the earth, and calling to the spirit of poor Patroclus. And Achilles, pacing heavily round the fire, groaned without cease, while his friend's bones burned, as a father groans for a newly wedded son, whose death leaves his wretched parents in despair. At the hour when the morning star rises, heralding the new day, and in his wake saffron-robed dawn spreads light on the waves, the fire died down and the flames ceased. The winds returned home over the Thracian sea, roaring above the surging waves. Achilles turned away from the smoldering pyre, lay down exhausted, and instantly slept. But his comrades gathered round him, and the noise of their voices and footsteps roused him once more. Sitting upright, he spoke to them. "Atreides, and you other leaders of the Achaeans, quench the glowing pyre with red wine, wherever there are embers. Then let us collect the ashes of Patroclus, Menoetius' son, separating them from the rest, though that is easy since he lay at the center of the pyre, while the men and horses and the rest were burned at its edge. Then we will place the ashes in a golden urn, sealed with a double layer of fat, until such time as I too vanish to Hades. As for the mound, provide what is fitting, but no more. And whichever of you survive among the benched ships when I am gone, then you must build our joint mound broad and high." They did as fleet-footed Achilles requested, first quenching the fire with wine to its edge, where there were embers, then in tears collecting the white ashes of their gentle comrade, placing them in a golden urn sealed with a double layer of fat, and covering it with a soft linen cloth they took it to his hut. Next they traced the circuit of his mound, setting a ring of stones around the pyre, then piling earth inside. When they had raised the barrow, they made as if to leave, but Achilles stopped them and made them sit in a wide ring where he had decided funeral games would be held, and sent for prizes from his ships: cauldrons, tripods, horses, mules, sturdy oxen, female slaves, and gray iron. Preparations for the chariot race. For the first event, a chariot race, Achilles offered splendid prizes: a woman skilled in fine handiwork, and a tripod with ear-shaped handles holding 22 measures, for the winner. A 6-year-old mare, broken in and pregnant with a mule foal, for the runner-up, for the third place. For the first event, a chariot race, Achilles offered splendid prizes: a woman skilled in fine handiwork, and a tripod with ear-shaped handles holding 22 measures, for the winner. A 6-year-old mare, broken in and pregnant with a mule foal, for the runner-up. For the third place, a brand new gleaming cauldron holding 4 measures. For the fourth, 2 talents of gold. And the fifth, a brand new 2-handled cooking dish. He rose and spoke to the Argives. "Atreides, and you other bronze-greaved Achaeans, these are the prizes that await the winning charioteers. If we Greeks were holding the games in another man's honor, since I have the finest pair of horses, immortal steeds that Poseidon gave my father Peleus, and he in turn gave me, no doubt I would carry off first prize. But they've lost their great and glorious charioteer. a kind man who'd rub sweet oil in their manes after washing them in clear water. And now they stand and mourn him, heart-stricken, their manes sweeping the ground. But the event is open to the rest of you, whichever of you Achaeans trust in your horses and chariot. At this the competitors came forward. Noble Eumelus was first to rise, Admetus' dear son, a skillful horseman. Then mighty Diomedes, son of Tydeus, rose to harness the horses of the breed of Tros, taken from Aeneas, though Apollo saved Aeneas himself. Red-haired Menelaus was next, Zeus-born Atreides, yoking swift horses Aethe, a mare of Agamemnon's, and his own horse Podargus. Ecapolus, Anchises of Sicion's son, had given the mare as a gift to Agamemnon, so he might stay safely at home and not follow the king to windy Troy. Zeus had granted him great wealth in spacious Sicyon. Menelaus now harnessed the eager mare. The fourth to ready his long-maned team was Antilochus, noble son of proud Nestor, son of Neleus, and the swift horses harnessed to his chariot were of the Pylian breed. His father approached to offer some good advice, the wise to the wise. Antilochus, young as you are, Zeus and Poseidon love you, and they have made you an expert horseman, so you need little advice from me. Yet, expert though you are at navigating the turns, remember your horses are the slowest in this race, and that's a great handicap. Their horses are quicker, but their charioteers no more cunning, so use all your skill, if you don't want to see the prizes slip away. It is skill, not mere strength, that makes the better woodsman. Skill lets the helmsman on the wine-dark waves steer a sailing ship buffeted by the wind, and skill too sees one charioteer beat another. One man, leaving it all to his horses, slackens the reins and lets his team wander, his lines stray. But the skillful man, though with slower horses, thinks of the turn and wheels close by the post, keeps his team in hand from the start, using the ox-hide reins, and keeps his eyes on the lead chariot. Excuse me. Now here's something to look out for. There's a dead tree stump, of weathered oak or pine, about 6 foot high, flanked by 2 white stones at the turn. The ground is smooth and firm on the bend. It may mark an ancient grave, or perhaps was a turning post long ago. Now Achilles has adopted it as his. Hug it tightly as you turn, and lean to the left of your team yourself as you stand firm on your platform of plaited thongs. Flick the offside horse with your whip, shout him on and give him rein, but let the near side run so near the post of the hub of the well-built wheel almost grazes the stone. But don't touch it and wreck your chariot and harm the horses, or the rest will have glory and you the blame. Use your wits, dear son, and look sharp. If you can pass inside at the turn, no one will put on speed and overtake you, not even if he drove noble Arion in pursuit, a Drasticis racehorse that was sired in heaven, or of Laomedon's breed of famous horses, the very best in Troy. With this advice to his son on how to win, Nestor, son of Neleus, regained his place and sat, while Meriones, the 5th competitor, readied his long-maned horses. Then all mounted their chariots, and cast their lots one by one into Achilles' helmet. When he shook it, out leapt the lot of Nestor's son Antilochus, then that of Lord Eumelus, of Menelaus the famous spearman, and of Meriones, while that of Diomedes, the best of them all, was last. They lined up for the start, and Achilles pointed out the turning post far off over the flat plain, where godlike Phoenix, his father's squire, was placed as referee to keep a watch on the race and judge their merits. The chariot race. As one, they raised their whips, shook the reins, and urged their teams on. Swiftly the horses galloped over the plain, leaving the ships behind. A whirlwind cloud of dust rose to their chests, and their manes streamed in the wind. Now the chariots ran freely over the solid ground, now they leapt in the air, while the hearts of the charioteers beat fast as they strove for victory, and they shouted to their horses, flying along in the storm of dust. It was not till the galloping horses were heading back towards the Grey Sea that each team showed its mettle. and the charioteers forced the pace. Eumelus' swift-footed mares shot to the front, chased by Diomedes' stallions, hot on their heels, as if they might mount Eumelus' chariot, and their heads were at his back as they flew, blowing hot breath on his neck and shoulders. Diomedes would have passed him now, or at least drawn level, if Phoebus Apollo in resentment had not struck the gleaming whip from his hand. Diomedes saw the mares run on, while his own horses slowed without the effect of the whip, and tears of anger filled his eyes. But Athena saw that Apollo had interfered, and speeding after, returned the whip and inspired the team. Then in her anger she chased down Eumelus and shattered the yoke of his chariot, so the mares swerved from side to side, and the broken pole struck the ground, while Eumelus himself was hurled to the earth beside the wheel. The skin was stripped from his elbows, nose, and cheeks, his forehead bruised, while his eyes filled with tears, and he was robbed of speech. These gods are mean. Meanwhile, Diomedes passed the wreck and drove his powerful horses on, far in the lead. Athena had strengthened his team and given him the glory, and red-haired Menelaus, the son of Atreus, ran second. But Antilochus called to his father's team. "On now, show me how you can run. You'll not catch Diomedes' pair, for Athena grants them strength and him the glory. But chase down Menelaus' team. Don't let them beat you, or Aether the mare will put you to shame. Why so slow, my beauties? I'll tell you this. If we win a lesser prize, there will be no sweet fodder at Nestor's hands. He'll slit your throats with his keen blade. So on, as fast as you can, and I'll contrive to pass them where the course narrows. That's my chance." With this, the horses, responding to his threat, speeded up for a while, and soon the steadfast Antilochus saw a narrow place in the sunken road ahead, where a stream swollen by winter rain had eroded the track and hollowed out the course. Menelaus drove on, assuming no one could overtake, but Antilochus veered alongside, almost off the track. Then Menelaus called to him in alarm. "Rein in, Antilochus. That's recklessness. The track's wider further on. Pass there if you can. Mind my chariot. Don't wreck us both." He shouted loud enough, but Antilochus, pretending not to hear, plied his whip and drove the more wildly. They ran side by side a discus length, as far as a young athlete testing his strength can hurl it from his shoulder. Then Menelaus held back, and his pair gave way, fearing the teams might collide and overturn the light chariots, hurling their masters in the dust, for all their eagerness to win. Red-haired Menelaus stormed at Antilochus. "You're a pest, Antilochus. We Achaeans credited you with more sense. All the same, you'll not win a prize when I force you to answer on oath to this." With that, he addressed his team. "Don't flag and don't lose heart. Their legs will weaken sooner than yours. They're carrying more years." And his pair, responding to his call, increased their speed and closed on the pair in front. The spectators quarrel. Meanwhile, the spectators from their seats in the ring were waiting to catch sight of the horses, flying towards them in a cloud of dust. The Cretan leader, Idomeneus, was first to see them, from the lookout point high above the assembly. When he heard the charioteer's voice shouting to his horses, he recognized the man despite the distance, and he knew one of the lead horses that showed clearly, a bay with a white patch like a full moon on its brow. He stood and called to the Argives. "My friends, can you see the horses too? A different team's ahead. It's a new charioteer in the lead. Eumelus' mares were in front on the outward leg, but they must have come to grief. I saw them galloping first towards the turning post, but there's no sign of them now, though I've searched the whole Trojan plain. Perhaps the reins slipped from his hands and he failed to take the turn? I think it's there his chariot must have wrecked and hurled him to the ground, while the mares swerved and bolted in their terror. Stand and look on yourselves. I think the leader is Aetolian, yes. It's great Diomedes, prince among Argives, son of horse-taming Tydeus." But Ajax the Lesser, that fine runner, the son of Oileus, was quick to disagree. "Idomeneus, why are you always sounding off? Those high-stepping mares are still far out on the plain. You're not young anymore, nor are your eyes the sharpest among us. Yet you're always laying down the law. Among your betters you should hold your tongue. Eumelus' mares are still in the lead, just as they were before. That's him standing there, the reins in his hands." Idomeneus answered angrily. Ajax, you're good at insults, but useless in counsel. Your bad manners always let you down. Come, let's bet on who's in the lead, with Atreides as referee. Let's wager a tripod or a cauldron. Losing it might teach you a lesson. At this, Ajax the Lesser, in his anger, leapt to his feet, ready with more insults, and the quarrel would soon have been out of hand, if Achilles had not risen and spoken. Ajax, Idomeneus, no more of this. Enough of these crude discourtesies. It is wrong to behave so, and you'd be the first to condemn such things in others. Sit down again in the ring and watch the race. The teams will soon be home in their rush for victory, and then you'll all see which of the Argive horses lead and which are behind. The prize giving. There's a lot of inferences from seeing a faraway chariot. Yeah, they really like the bet, I guess. Diomedes soon arrived, whipping the high-stepping horses hard as they sped towards the goal. Showers of dust clung to him, and wheel rims hardly left a trace on the powdery ground, as the swift-footed pair flew onwards pulling the chariot, decorated with gold and tin. He drew to a halt in the center of the ring, sweat pouring to the ground from his horses' chest and necks. He himself leapt to the ground from his gleaming chariot and leant the long whip against the shaft. Nor did his squire Sthenelus lose a moment in claiming the prize, but eagerly his joyful friends led away the women and carried off the eared tripod, while he unharnessed the horses. Antilochus, Nestor's son, came in second, having outstripped Menelaus by guile, not speed, though Menelaus and his swift team still came in close behind, by no more than the distance from horse to wheel. As a horse strains at the yoke under its master's lash, the tip of its tail brushes the wheel rim, and that was how close Menelaus came to peerless Antilochus, though he had been a discus throw behind at first. Long-maned Aethe, Agamemnon's mare, was pulling ever more strongly, and if the course had been a little longer, he would have overtaken Antilochus decisively. Meriones, Idomeneus' strong squire, came in a spear cast behind Menelaus, being the least skillful charioteer and driving the slowest horses. And last of all came Eumelus, dragging his light chariot and driving his horses ahead of him. Hearing his tale, swift-footed Achilles felt sorry for the man, and spoke winged words to the Argives. The best charioteer has come in last, but he deserves the prize for second place, given Diomedes has won the first. The Achaeans shouted their agreement, and he would have given Eumelus the mare if Antilochus, son of proud Nestor, had not risen to object. Achilles, if you as you say, then I resent it. This good man though he is, you'd rob me of my prize, just because he and his chariot came to harm. He'd not have been last if he'd prayed to the gods before the races. If you truly pity him and he's dear to you, then in your hut there's a pile of gold and bronze. There are women, horses, sheep too. Give him a fine prize later, or do it now and have these Greeks applaud you. But I'll not yield the mare. If anyone wants her, let him fight me for her, hand to hand. Noble Achilles, the great runner, smiled at Antilochus, his dear comrade, and rejoicing in his friendship, spoke to him warmly. Antilochus, if you'd rather I gave Eumelus something of my own as an extra prize, I will. I'll grant him the breastplate I took from Asteropaeus. It's a valuable one, of bronze plated, with bands of shining tin. Then he asked his dear friend Automedon to fetch it from his hut, and taking it, he placed it in Eumelus' hands, and he was delighted to receive it. Antilochus placates Menelaus. Now Menelaus rose, mortified and furiously angry with Antilochus. A herald placed the staff in his hands and commanded silence. Then the godlike warrior spoke. Antilochus, what is this? You used to be a man of sense. Now you shame my prowess, cutting across my team and thrusting your own slower pair ahead. Come now, leaders and rulers of Achaea. Judge impartially between us, lest in future some bronze-clad Achaean says that Antilochus, who cheated Menelaus, won the mare because, though his team were not as fast, he was the worthier and more skillful man. I will even resolve the case myself, and justly too, such that none of you Danons will disagree. Antilochus, nurtured by Zeus, come here.
stand before your chariot and team, and as is customary, take the whip in hand you used just now. Place your hand against a horse's flank and swear by the Earthshaker and Encircler that you did not thwart me by a deliberate foul."
"Ah, be gentle with me, King Menelaus," the sober Antilochus replied. "You are older and wiser. You know the follies a young man commits. His mind is hasty and his judgment poor. So forgive me, and I will give you the mare myself, of my own free will. And if you ask more of me in my house, I'd give it eagerly, rather than be exiled from your heart, you whom Zeus nurtured, and perjure myself before the gods." With this, proud Nestor's son led the mare forward and gave her up to Menelaus, whose heart was warmed by the gesture, warmed like the dew-wet grain ripening at harvest time. So he spoke warm words to Antilochus in reply.
"Antilochus, I can't be angry with you, since you were never foolish or reckless before, though this time youth got the better of judgment. Don't try to outwit your elders. It would have been harder for another to placate me, but you and your good father and your brother have toiled and suffered greatly for my cause, so I accept your apology and grant you the mare, though she is mine, so all may know my heart is never overproud or unyielding."
So saying, he handed the mare over to Noemon, Antilochus's friend, to lead away, and took the gleaming cauldron as his prize. Meriones, who came in fourth, accepted the 2 talents of gold so reserved, while the 5th prize, the 2-handled dish, went unclaimed. Achilles carried it through the throng, and approaching Nestor, handed it to him, saying, "My venerable lord, accept and treasure this memento of Patroclus' funeral, for you will never see him more among the Argives. Sadly, old age weighs on you now, and you cannot contend in boxing, wrestling, javelin throwing, or the foot race, but I give you this prize none the less." So saying, he placed it in Nestor's hands, and he accepting it with delight, replied with winged words, "Yes, indeed, my son. What you say is true. I am no longer as steady on my feet, dear friend, nor can I fling my arms out in a wide wrestling grip. I wish I were as young and strong as that time when the Ippians were interring King Amarynceus at Buprasium, and his sons held funeral games in his honor. Then no man proved himself my equal, Ippians, Pylians, or proud Aetolians. I beat Clytomedes, the son of Inops, in the boxing, and Ancaeus of Pleuron, who took me on in the wrestling. In the foot race I outran Iphiclus, good as he was, and my spear outthrew Phyleus and Polydorus. Only in the chariot race did the 2 Moliones beat me, by their combined superior strength, forcing their team to the front, begrudging me the victory since the race carried the best prize. They were twins, and one could drive with a sure hand, while the other plied the whip. Such was the man I once was, but now it's time for younger men. Sadly, old age is upon me. Though then I was first among the warriors. Now you must go on with your dear friend's funeral games. Meanwhile, I welcome your gift with pleasure. Your remembrance of our friendship delights my heart, and of the honor I'm owed among the Achaeans. In return, let the gods grant you favor enough to satisfy your heart." Welcome, CMP. The boxing match. When he had listened to Nestor's words, Achilles, son of Peleus, made his way through the crowd of spectators and set out the prizes for the boxing match. For the winner he fetched a 6-year-old mule, broken in, and they are hardest of all to break, and tethered it in the arena. For the loser there was a 2-handled drinking cup. Then he announced the contest. "Atreides, and all you bronze-greaved Achaeans, I want to see our 2 best boxers raise their fists and fight for these prizes. He whom Apollo grants true endurance in our eyes will return to his hut, leading this sturdy mule, while the loser shall have this fine cup." At this, a tall and powerful warrior stood up, a champion boxer, Ippius, son of Panopeus. He placed his hand on the mule, saying, "Whoever wants the cup, step forward. No man will beat me with his fists, and take the mule, since I'm the best boxer, I say. I may not be the greatest warrior, a man can't be best at everything, but this thing is for sure. Whoever I fight, I'll tear his flesh to ribbons and break his bones. I hope his kin are here to take him away when I've felled him." A silence fell at his words. Godlike Euryalus alone stood up to fight him, the son of King Mecisteus, Teleus' son, who at the funeral games for Oedipus in Thebes defeated every Cadmean opponent. Diomedes, the spearman, eager to see him win, helped Euryalus to prepare. It's Euryalus. I don't know Greek. And gave him encouragement. He buckled on his belt and bound the ox-hide thongs carefully on his hands. When the two contestants were ready, they stepped to the center of the arena, and raising their mighty arms, set to. Each landed heavy blows with their fists, and they ground their teeth as the sweat poured over their limbs. Euryalus sought an opening, but noble Epeius swung and struck his jaw, and he went straight down, his legs collapsing under him. Like a fish that leaps in the weed-strewn shallows under a ripple stirred by the north wind, then falls back into the dark wave, so Euryalus leapt when he was struck. But the big-hearted Epeius lifted him and set him on his feet, and all his friends crowded round and supported him from the ring, his feet trailing, his head lolling, as he spat out clots of blood. He was still confused when they sat him down in his corner and had to fetch the cup, his prize, themselves. The wrestling bout. Swiftly, Achilles brought out the prizes for the third contest, a wrestling bout. For the winner, a great tripod to hold a cauldron over the flames, valued by the Achaeans at 12 oxen. For the loser, a female slave skilled in fine handiwork, and she they reckoned at 4 oxen. Then he announced the bout. "Rise now, whichever pair of warriors will try their skill." At his words, Telamonian Ajax stepped forward, and cunning Odysseus also got to his feet, a man of many wiles. When they had both prepared, they entered the ring and came to grips, clasping each other in their mighty arms, locked together like the sloping rafters that some skilled craftsman set in place on a tall house to resist the winds. Their backs creaked under the pressure of their strong hands, and the sweat ran down in streams, while many a blood-red wheal appeared on their shoulders and ribs, as they strove for the ornate tripod and the glory. Odysseus could no more trip Ajax and floor him than Ajax could move powerful Odysseus's firm stance. But when they began to weary the watching Achaeans, Ajax spoke quietly to Odysseus. "Zeus-born son of Laertes, Odysseus of the many wiles, you'd best try lift me, or I you, and let Zeus decide the matter." So saying, he tried a lift, but Odysseus knew a trick or two. He kicked Ajax hard in the back of his knee and toppled him backwards, falling on his chest. The spectators looked on admiringly, as they stood, and noble long-enduring Odysseus in turn tried a lift, raising him off the ground a fraction, then failing to lift him further, crooking a leg around Ajax's knee, so they fell side by side, smothered in dust. They sprang up ready for a third round, but Achilles restrained them. "No more, don't wear each other out. You are both victorious and shall have identical prizes. There are other events now for competition." With this, they readily retired, and wiping the dust from their bodies, donned their tunics. The foot race. Now Achilles offered prizes for a foot race. First prize was a fine silver mixing bowl of 6 measures, the loveliest thing in the world. A masterpiece of Sidonian craftsmanship, gifted to Thoas by Phoenician merchants on a trading mission over the dark waters. His grandson Euenos, Jason's son, gave it to Patroclus as ransom for Lycia. Now Achilles offered the bowl as a prize to the fastest runner, in tribute to his friend. The second prize was a large, well-fattened ox, and for the third a half-talent in gold. Achilles now rose and asked for entrance. Swift Ajax the Lesser and Odysseus the Cunning stepped forward, with the fastest of the young men, Antilochus, Nestor's son. They took their places at the start, and Achilles pointed out the turning post. Off they ran, and Ajax, son of Oileus, hit the front, with noble Odysseus at his heels, as close as a woman weaving holds the shuttle to her chest, as she draws it along skillfully, passing its spool through the warp. He trod in Ajax's footsteps before the dust had settled, and his breath beat on Ajax's neck as they ran swiftly on. The Greeks shouted for Odysseus as he strained for victory, urging him on to the utmost. As they were nearing the finish, Odysseus prayed urgently in his heart to bright-eyed Athena. "Goddess, hear me. Help me if you will, and quicken my legs." He prayed, and Athena heard, making his limbs seem lighter, and just as they reached the line, Pallas Athena made Ajax slip on a patch of offal from the sacrifice of bellowing bulls that fleet-footed Achilles had made in honor of Patroclus. He fell, and his mouth and nostrils were filled with offal, while Odysseus came in first and claimed the silver bowl, leaving the ox for noble Ajax. He stood there, spitting out the offal, grasping the ox's horn, and complained to the Argives. "There! Did you see how the goddess made me slip? She who's always at Odysseus' side, helping him?" His words raised a shout of laughter. Antilochus lifted his prize, the gold, and addressed the crowd. "Friends, I declare, and don't we know it, the immortals love the older generation. Ajax is only a few years more than I, but Odysseus is of the breed of former times, and as men say, a green old age is his, and he's a hard man for any Greek to beat, except for Achilles." This tribute to swift-footed Achilles brought a response from the prince himself. "Antilochus, your praise shall not go unrewarded, and I'll double the value of your prize." So saying, he placed another half-talent in his hands, much to Antilochus's delight. What is this nepotism? The armed combat. Now Achilles brought out a shield and helmet and a long-shadowed spear, Sarpedon's gear that Patroclus had captured. Then he announced the next event. "Our two best warriors must arm and fight each other for these prizes before the army with naked bronze. I will give the one who first penetrates the other's guard and draws blood this noble silver-studded Thracian sword I took from Asteropaeus, and the other arms they both can share, as well as a fine banquet in my hut." At these words, great Telamonian Ajax and mighty Diomedes, Tydeus' son, leapt to their feet. When they had armed themselves on their own side of the ring, they advanced to the center. So menacing and eager for battle, the Achaeans held their breath. Closing, they charged 3 times, and each time thrust at each other with their spears. Ajax pierced Diomedes' shield, but his breastplate kept the point from wounding him, while Diomedes kept thrusting at the rim of Ajax's shield, aiming for his neck with the point of his gleaming lance. Now the Greeks were so fearful for Ajax that they called an end to the contest and for shared prizes. However, Achilles awarded the long sword to Diomedes with its scabbard and its fine belt. Excuse me. The throwing competition. Then Achilles offered as a prize a huge lump of pig iron that the powerful Aetion used to hurl. Achilles had carried it off aboard ship with other of his possessions after he had killed him. Now he announced the next competition, calling for entrance. "The winner of this will have iron enough for 5 years, and even if his farmland is remote, he won't need to send a plowman or a shepherd into town for lack of it. This will supply all his needs." Up leapt steadfast Polypoetus, godlike and powerful Leonteus, Telamonian Ajax, and noble Apius. They lined up, and first Apius grasped the mass of iron and hurled it, but the Achaeans mocked his feeble effort. Then Leonteus, offshoot of Ares, tried, and his mark was quickly passed by Ajax, whose mighty throw won him the lead. But when stalwart Polypoetus grasped and flung it, he sent it far beyond them all, like a herdsman hurling his crook and sending it whirling past his herd of cows. There was a great shout, and Polypoetus' friends ran to carry off the royal prize to the hollow ships. The archery. For the archery prizes, Achilles laid out 10 double-headed axes of dark iron and 10 single. He set up a mast from a blue-prowed ship a long way off on the sands, and fastened a pigeon to it by the foot, offering the fluttering bird as a target. Whoever hits the pigeon as it flutters wins the double-headed axes for himself, and if anyone strikes the cord that holds it but misses the bird, he shall take the prize for a lesser shot, the single-headed axes. At this Lord Teucer rose, as did Meriones, noble squire of Idomeneus. They shook lots in a bronze helmet, and Teucer took first shot. He swiftly let fly a mighty arrow, but forgot his intended promise to Apollo of a rich sacrifice of firstling lambs. Apollo, grudging him success, caused him to miss the bird, but hit the cord that tied its foot, the sharp arrow slicing the bond in two. The cord fell as the pigeon darted skyward, and the Achaeans raised a great shout. But Meriones, who had readied an arrow while Teucer aimed, snatched the bow Hello. Welcome back. Alright, so we ended up taking them a bit more than the total 15. That's okay. We've got one more chapter to go. And that shouldn't take more than 50 minutes. So we'll be done before 7. We'll end as soon as the chapter's done, because I'm probably going to go grab dinner. But halfway through, I realized I didn't really say hello to a lot of people that showed up. First of all, Jackal, welcome. Thank you for coming in first. And then Gabe, good to see you as well. Congratulations on second. And then Rebecca as well. And then I said hello to C&D, but I'll say it again. Okay. We've got where did I put this? So we were on book 23. And that was 24 pages. And now this final book here is 21 pages. So we're more than halfway done with the stream in terms of length read. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and fade that out. And we will return to the reading. Book 24 and the final chapter of the Iliad, Achilles and Priam. The gods argue over the treatment of Hector's body. After the funeral games, the men left the assembly and scattered each to their own ship, ready for supper and then their fill of sweet sleep. But Achilles wept in remembrance of his friend, and sleep that conquers all refused to come. He tossed this way and that, regretting Patroclus' bravery and strength, remembering all they had done together and the hardships they had shared, embroiled in war or on the cruel sea. He shed great tears, thinking of these things, lying now on his side, his back, or on his face. Each night he would stagger to his feet, at last, and wander grieving along the sand. Dawn would find him there, as she lit the sea and shore. Then he would harness his swift team to his chariot, and rope Hector's corpse to the rear, and when he had dragged him 3 times round Patroclus' mound, return to rest in his hut, leaving Hector's body stretched out on its face in the dust. Yet Apollo kept the flesh from being spoiled, pitying the warrior even in death, and he covered the body with his golden aegis so that Achilles could not damage the skin as he dragged the corpse along. Though Achilles in his anger tried to disfigure Hector, the blessed immortals felt pity as they watched, and urged the sharp-eyed Hermes to steal the corpse. Though this thought pleased most of them, Hera, Poseidon, and bright-eyed Athena were opposed. They still hated sacred Ilium, Priam and his whole race, because of Paris and his foolish error in humiliating the 2 goddesses at the parade by his shepherd's hut, when he showed his preference for Aphrodite, praising her for furthering his sad lust. After 11 days of this, on the 12th dawn, Phoebus Apollo addressed them all. "Harsh and cruel you are, you immortals. Did Hector not burn the thighs of unblemished bulls and goats for you? And yet you have not the decency, now he is dead, to rescue his corpse for his wife, his mother, his child to watch over, nor for his father Priam and his friends, who might then swiftly give him to the fires and enact his funeral rites. You would rather help this brute Achilles, whose mind is warped, his will of adamant. The man's heart is like a lion's. Wild and powerful is that creature's in its urge to slaughter the shepherd's flocks for meat. Achilles
Achilles is as devoid of pity and of the shame that benefits men, urging restraint. Many a man loses someone closer to him than this, a brother born of the one mother, or a son. Yet when he has finished weeping and wailing, he has done, since the fates grant men patient endurance. But this man, having robbed Hector of life, ties him to his chariot and drags him round his dead friend's mound, as if that brought him honor or profit. Great as he is, let him be wary of our wrath, not disfigure the mute clay in his fury. But white-armed Hera took exception to all this. That might make sense, Lord of the Silver Bow, if the gods valued Hector as highly as Achilles. But Hector was a mere mortal, suckled at a woman's breast, while Achilles is child to a goddess. I nurtured her and reared her myself, and gave her in marriage to Peleus, a warrior dear to us immortals. All you gods, came to the wedding, and you, Apollo, were there yourself, sitting down to feast, lyre in hand, you faithless friend of wrongdoers. Zeus the Cloud-Gatherer now replied, Hera, curb your anger against us. These men will not be honored equally. Yet of all the mortals in Ilium, Hector was dearest to the gods. At least he was to me, never failing in his gifts towards me. My altar never lacked for sacrifice, for a share of all his meat and drink, the offerings that are our privilege. But no talk of stealing brave Hector's corpse, for Achilles would hear of it from his mother, who visits him night and day. Better for one of you to summon Thetis to me, so I may advise her wisely, to have Achilles accept a ransom and give Hector's body back to Priam. I wonder what's going to happen in the next part. Thetis persuades Achilles to ransom the corpse. Iris it was, swift as the storm wind, who sped off to carry the message, and halfway between Samothrace and rugged Imbros, plunged into the dark echoing waters. Down she sank like the fisherman's lead weight set in a piece of ox-horn that lures the greedy fish to their death. In a hollow cave she found Thetis, surrounded by the nymphs of the sea, bemoaning the destiny of her peerless son, doomed to die in the fertile land of Troy, far from his native soil. Fleet-footed Iris approached and spoke. Come, Thetis, Zeus of deathless wisdom summons you. Why does the great god ask for me? The silver-footed goddess replied. I am possessed by such deep sorrow I'd be ashamed to join the immortals. Yet I will go, for anything he says must carry weight. With that the lovely goddess donned a dark veil, blacker than black, and followed Iris, swift as the wind. The deep sea parted for them, and when they reached the shore they soared to the heavens, and found far-echoing Zeus surrounded by all the blessed immortals. Athena gave up her place next to the son of Cronos, and Hera handed her a fine golden cup and welcomed her sweetly, and Thetis drank and gave her back the cup. Then the father of gods and men addressed her. Lady Thetis, you come, I know, bearing the burden of sorrowful thought, yet I must tell you why I summoned you. The immortals have been quarreling these 9 days about how Hector's corpse is treated by Achilles, sacker of cities. They would like Hermes to spirit the body away, but I would rather honor Achilles and keep your love and respect in time to come. So dart down to his camp, and tell him what I say, that he has angered the gods, and I above all am filled with wrath, because he holds Hector's corpse by the beaked ships, instead of restoring it to Troy. Hopefully in fear of me he will return the body, but I will send Iris to brave Priam, and tell him to go to the Greek ships and offer a ransom for his son, gifts that will thaw the heart of Achilles. The goddess, silver-footed Thetis, instantly obeyed, darting down from the heights of Olympus to her son's hut. There she found him still grieving, while his friends prepared their morning meal. The carcass of a great shaggy ram lay there, awaiting their attention in the hut. His regal mother sat down beside him, and stroking him with her hand, said, Child, how long must you consume your heart with tears and sorrow, forgetting your food and bed? Why not find comfort with some woman, since you have but a brief time left to live, and the shadows of death and remorseless fate are already close upon you? Obey me swiftly now. And she gave him Zeus's message, to release Hector's corpse and take a ransom in exchange. Fleet-footed Achilles gazed at her and answered, "If such be the Olympians' firm wish, then let it be so. Let whoever brings fit ransom take away the dead." Iris carries the message to Priam. While mother and son were exchanging winged words there by the ships, Zeus sent Iris to sacred Ilium. "Down from Olympus, Iris, fast as you can, and tell brave Priam in Troy to go to the Greek ships and ransom his dear son's body, carrying gifts to Achilles that will thaw his heart. Tell him to go alone, not to take anyone else from Troy except one of the older heralds, to drive the light mule cart that will carry Achilles' victim back to the city. Tell him not to fear death or anything else, for we will grant him the best of guides, Hermes, who will escort him to Achilles. Once in Achilles' hut, no one will harm him, for he will not find Achilles witless, mindless, vicious, but one who will in kindness spare the suppliant." Those were his words, and Iris, swift as the storm wind, sped away with the message. She came to Priam's palace and found it filled with grief and lamentation. Around their father his sons sat, their garments drenched with tears. There in the middle of the courtyard was the aged king wrapped in a cloak, his head and neck soiled by the earth from his hands as he groveled on the ground. Throughout the palace his daughters and daughters-in-law were bemoaning the host of noble warriors who had lost their lives at Greek hands. Iris, Zeus's messenger, came to Priam and said, "Take heart, Dardanian Priam. Forgo all fear. I am here not as a herald of evil, but with the best of intent. I come with a message from Zeus, who, far off though he may be, still cares about you and has pity." Then she repeated Zeus's wishes and departed. Then Priam ordered his sons to harness the light mule cart, with a wicker frame on top. He himself went down to his vaulted treasure chamber, high-roofed and fragrant with cedar wood, which was full of precious things. He summoned his wife Hecate and said, "Lady, a message from Zeus has come to me, telling me to go to the Greek ships and ransom our dear son's body, with gifts that will thaw Achilles' heart. I feel compelled to go to the Greek camp, to their ships, but tell me what you think." Priam prepares to visit the Greek camp. Hecate cried out at his words and said, "Alas, where is that wisdom now for which you are famous here and abroad? How can you go to the Greek ships and face the man who has slaughtered so many of your fine sons? Your heart must be made of iron. Once you are in his power, from the moment he sets eye on you, the savage, treacherous brute will show you neither mercy nor respect. Let us grieve for our son here, in the hall. This is the thread fate spun for that child of mine at his birth, to sate the running dogs far from us, his corpse held captive by that man of violence. I wish I could fix my teeth in Achilles' heart and devour it. That would requite him for what he has done to my son, who showed he was no coward when he was killed, fighting to defend the men and the full-breasted women of Troy, without thought of flight or safety." Priam, that godlike old man, answered her, "Don't try to prevent me going. I will not be persuaded. And don't you prove a bird of ill omen here. If any man on earth had spoken to me of this, even a priest, or some diviner who reads the sacrificial entrails, I would have thought it false, and rejected it the more. But I heard the voice of a goddess, and saw her face to face, so I must go and fulfill her command. If I am doomed to die by the ships of the bronze-clad Greeks, then so be it. When I have clasped my son in my arms and wept my fill, then let Achilles slay me on the spot." So saying, he lifted the ornate lids of several chests, from which he took 12 fine robes and 12 single-sided cloaks, with as many coverlets, white mantles, and tunics also. He weighed out 10 talents of gold, and had them taken outside, with 2 bright tripods and 4 great cauldrons. And he even added a great treasure, a beautiful cup, a gift from the men of Thrace when he went on an embassy there,
so eager was he to ransom his dear son fittingly. Then he drove out the Trojans cluttering the portico, rebuking them with harsh words. "Out, you shameful wretches! Have you nothing to grieve for at home that you come to trouble me? Is it not enough that Zeus has brought me sorrow, taking from me the best of sons? You will soon know it too. You will be easy meat for the Greeks now Hector is dead. As for me, I only hope I go to the house of Hades before I have to see this city plundered and laid waste." With this, he chased after them with his staff, and they fled from the angry old man. He shouted reproaches at his sons as well, Helenus, Paris, noble Agathon, Pammon, Antiphanes, Polites, of the loud war cry, Deiphobus, Hippothous, and lordly Dius. He ordered all 9 around at the top of his voice. "Quick, you useless tribe, my disgrace! Would that instead of Hector you were the ones who had died by the swift ships. Alas, my wretched fate! I had the best sons in all the wide land of Troy, yet they are gone, every one. Godlike Mestor, Troilus, the fierce charioteer, and now Hector, a god among men, who seemed the son of a divine being, not of this mere mortal. War has taken them all, while you shameful creatures remain, liars and wastrels, better at treading the dust in dance, or stealing lambs and kids from the fields. Make ready the cart now, and pile these things inside, so I can be on my way." So he ranted, and they, fearful of their father's anger, brought out the light mule cart, new and carefully made, and added the wicker frame on top. They took the boxwood yoke with its central boss and fine guide rings from its peg, and carried it out with its 12-foot yoke band. They set the yoke carefully on the polished shaft, in the notch at the end, and slipped the ring over the pin. Then they bound it fast, so the boss with 3 turns either way, then wound it round the shaft and tucked the loose end in. They carried the princely ransom for Hector's corpse from the treasure chamber, and heaped the items on the wooden cart. Then they yoked the sturdy mules, trained to work in harnesses, a glorious gift to Priam from the Mysians. Last of all they brought, and yoked to his chariot, horses kept by the king himself, and fed at the gleaming manger. Priam prays to Zeus. Priam and the herald were waiting, lost in thought, in the lofty palace, for their teams to be harnessed, when Hecate came to them full of anxiety, carrying a golden cup of honeyed wine in her right hand, so they might make libation before they set out. She approached the chariot, saying, "There, pour a libation to Father Zeus, and pray for your safe return from the enemy camp, since your heart persuades you to go despite my misgivings. Pray to the son of Cronos, lord of the storm clouds, god of Ida, who gazes down on our whole land of Troy, and ask him to send a bird of omen, and make it that swift messenger, dearest to him of all the birds, and mightiest. Let it appear on your right hand, so you can note it, and feel safe in going among the horse-loving Danaans. If Zeus does not grant you a sight of his swift messenger, then I'd not advise you to visit the Argive ships, no matter how you feel." "Wife," Priam replied, "I will do as you suggest, for it is good to pray to Zeus and ask him for mercy." So saying, the old man asked the maid to pour fresh water over his hands. She brought a pitcher of water and a basin, and when he had washed his hands, he took the cup from his wife, and standing in the center of the courtyard, he poured the wine, then gazed towards heaven and prayed aloud. "Glorious and almighty Father Zeus, who rules from Ida. I'm gonna mess that up every time. Let me be welcome in Achilles' hut, and may he show mercy. Send me a bird of omen, that swift messenger, dearest to you of all birds and mightiest. Let it appear on my right hand, so I can note it and feel safe in going among the horse-loving Danaans." Zeus, the counselor, heard his prayer, and sent the greatest of winged omens, the dark raptor men call the black eagle. Its wingspan was as wide as the double doors, strong and secure, of a rich man's lofty treasure chamber, and it soared on the right, high over the city. They were overjoyed at a sight that warmed the hearts of all. The old man quickly mounted the chariot and drove from the echoing portico out through the palace gate. The mules in front pulled the cart driven by wise Idaeus, while the old man's team followed. He cracked his whip as they sped through the city, while his folk followed after, wailing as if he went to his death. But when they had left the city and entered the plain, his sons and sons-in-law turned back to Illiad. The pair did not escape Zeus, the far echoer's notice, as they forged across the plain, and pitying the old man, he spoke at once to his dear son Hermes. "You love to guide travelers and give ear to whomever you wish, so go and escort Priam to the hollow ships of the Greeks, so that no one knows him till he reaches Achilles." At this, the messenger god, the slayer of Argus, quick to obey, bound his beautiful sandals on his feet, the sandals of imperishable gold that carry him swift as the gale over the ocean waves and the boundless earth. He took with him that wand with which he lulls to sleep or rouses from slumber whomsoever he will. He flew with it in his hand, and soon came to Hellespont and Troy. There he appeared in the likeness of a young prince at that age, when a beard first starts to grow, and youth's charms are at their greatest. Hermes guides Priam to Achilles' hut. I apologize, I'm going to need to take another quick break, but I will be right back. I am back. Sorry about that. Stupid cars. Hermes guides Priam to Achilles' hut. When the pair had passed the great barrow of Ilus, they halted the mules and the horses by the river to drink. It was twilight now, and Hermes was close before the herald saw him. Turning to Priam, he said, "Take care, Dardanian Priam. Here is something that calls for caution. There's a man in sight who will butcher us, it seems to me. Let's flee in the chariot, or we'll have to fall at his feet and hope for mercy." At this the old man's hair stood on end, and his mind filled with fear and confusion. But as he stood there in a daze, the helper went straight to the old man and took his hand, and asked him, "Father, where are you off to, with your mules and horses, through the sacred night, when ordinary mortals sleep? Do you not fear the Greeks and their fury, an enemy without shame close by? What would you do if one of them saw you carrying treasure through this swiftly darkening night? You are neither of you young enough to ward off some youngster's attack. I'm no threat to you, however, and I will be your defense, since to me you are the very image of my own father." Godlike Priam, the aged king, replied, "Dear son, it is as you say. Yet some god has extended his hand above me, since he sends a traveler such as you to meet me. A fine omen, for you are of marvelous beauty and stature, and wise beyond your years. Happy are the parents from whom you spring.
Indeed, sir, Hermes answered. It may be so. But tell me truly, do you carry this heap of noble treasure to safety in some foreign part? Or are you all fleeing Troy in fear, having lost the best of warriors, your fine son, who never ceased to fight the Achaeans?
Godlike Priam replied, Who are you, noble youth? Who are your parents? You speak so eloquently of my unfortunate son.
The messenger god, the slayer of Argus, answered, You are testing me, I see, my venerable lord, in asking about Hector. I have often seen him in battle, where glory is won. I saw him killing Argives when he drove them to the ships, cutting men down with the sharp bronze, and we stood there dumbfounded, for Achilles held us back in his wrath against Agamemnon. I am Achilles' squire, who sailed here with him, one of the Myrmidons, the son of Polyctor. He is wealthy, an old man like you, with 6 sons, and I a 7th. We cast lots, and I was chosen to follow Achilles. Tonight I am scouting the plains, since at dawn the bright-eyed Achaeans will battle for the city. They are tired of sitting idle, and Agamemnon can no longer restrain them in their eagerness for war.
Godlike Priam, the aged king, replied, If you are truly Achilles' squire, tell me this. Is my son's body still by the ships, or has Achilles hewn him limb from limb and scattered him to the dogs?
Again the slayer of Argus answered, The dogs and carrion birds have not devoured him yet, my venerable lord, and his corpse still lies by Achilles' ship among the huts as before. He has lain there 12 days now, but his flesh has not decayed, nor do the worms that feed on the war dead consume him. It is true that ruthless Achilles drags his body round his dear comrade's barrow every dawn, yet he cannot harm him. You would marvel if you came and saw him, fresh as dew, washed clean of blood, without a stain upon him, and all his wounds are closed, wherever the host of bronze blades struck him. So do the blessed gods care for his corpse, for he was dear to them.
The old man's mind was eased to hear this, saying, My child, it is good to give the immortals all that is due them, for in my halls my son, as surely as he lived, never forgot the gods who hold Olympus, and they have now remembered him, even though he has met his doom. Come, take this fine goblet and protect me, and see me safe at Achilles' hut, with the blessings of the gods.
The messenger god, the slayer of Argus, spoke once more. My venerable lord, because I am young, you test me, but you cannot tempt me to take a gift without Achilles' knowledge. I respect him deeply, and fear to rob him of what should be his, lest evil later befalls me. Yet I would guide you to glorious Argus, and wait on you with kind attention as we travel on foot or aboard ship, and no one would dare attack you on seeing your guide. With that, the helper leapt into the chariot, seized the whip and reins, and breathed fresh strength into the horses and mules. When they came to the trench and wall defending the ships, the guards were preparing their meal, and the slayer of Argus shed sleep around them, thrust back the bars, and opened the gates, and drove Priam through them with the cart and his gifts. They came to Achilles' hut, a high-roofed hut the Myrmidons built for their prince, with beams cut from the fir trees. They had thatched it with meadow rushes, and fenced it with stakes, close set to make a courtyard. The gate to the yard was held by a single fir wood bar that needed 3 Myrmidons to drive it home or draw it back, though Achilles could do so alone. The gate Hermes the helper opened for the aged king, ahead of the glorious gifts destined for fleet-footed Achilles. Then he stepped down from the chariot, saying, Venerable lord, my father sent me to guide you on your way. You have been visited by an immortal god, for I am Hermes. Now I must leave you and return, and not be seen by Achilles, for it would be wrong for a god to be entertained openly by a mortal man. But you must go in, and clasp his knees, and invoke his father Peleus, and his mother of the shining tresses, and his child, and so move his heart. I wonder what happens next. Gabe, thank you very much for... Oh, I didn't even read... Gabe. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. What happens next?
Priam moves Achilles' heart. With that, Hermes left for high Olympus, while Priam climbed down from his chariot, leaving Idaeus to handle the horses and mules. The old king went straight to the hut frequented by Zeus-beloved Achilles. He found him there, with only the warrior Automedon and warlike Alcimus of all his friends. They were busy attending to his meal. The table stood at his side, but he had finished eating and drinking. Great Priam slipped in unobserved, and reaching Achilles, clasped his knees and kissed his hands, the fearful, man-killing hands that had slaughtered so many of his sons. Achilles was astonished at the sight of godlike Priam, as were his friends. They stared at each other, astounded, as men do in the hall of a wealthy nobleman, when a stranger, who has murdered a man in a moment of frenzy in his own country, seeking refuge abroad, bursts in on them. But Priam was already entreating Achilles. "Godlike Achilles, think of your own father, who is of my generation, and so is likewise on the sad threshold of old age. Perhaps his neighbors are troubling him, and there is no one to protect him from harm or ward off ruin. But he at least can rejoice in the knowledge that you live, and each day brings the hope of seeing you return from Troy, while I am a victim of sad fate. Of the best of my sons, the best in all of Troy, not one is left. 50 sons I had, when you Achaeans landed, 19 by the one wife, wow, and the rest by other ladies of my court. Wow. Most of them have fallen in furious battle, and the defender of the city and its people, my prime recourse, Hector, you have killed, as he fought for his country. I come now to the ships to beg his corpse from you, bringing a princely ransom. Respect the gods, Achilles, and show mercy towards me, remembering your own father, for I am more to be pitied than he, since I have brought myself to do what no other man on earth would do. I have lifted to my lips the hand of the man who killed my sons." His words had moved Achilles to tears at the thought of his own father, and taking the old man's hands, he set him gently from it, while both were lost in memory. Priam remembered man-killing Hector and wept aloud at Achilles' feet, while Achilles wept for his father Peleus and for Patroclus once more, and the sound of their lament filled the hut. But when Achilles was sated with weeping and the force of grief was spent, he rose instantly from his chair, and raising the old king by his arm, he took pity on his grey beard and hair, and spoke eloquently to him. "You are indeed unfortunate, and your heart has endured much sorrow. Surely, though, there is iron in your spirit, daring to come alone to our ships and face the man who slew so many of your noble sons. Come, sit here and we will shut away our sorrows, despite our grief, since there is but cold comfort in lament. The gods have spun the thread of fate for wretched mortals. We live in sorrow, while they are free from care. 2 urns stand in Zeus's palace containing the experiences he grants mortals. One holds blessings, the other ills. Those who receive a mixture of the two meet with good and ill, but those whom the Thunderer only serves from the jar of ills becomes an outcast, driven over the face of the earth by despair, a wanderer honored neither by gods nor men. See how the gods showered glorious gifts on my father Peleus from the moment of his birth, wealth and possessions beyond other men, kingship of the Myrmidons, and though but a mortal man, a goddess for a wife. Yet some god brought evil even to him. No crowd of princes, but an only son doomed to an untimely end. He receives no care from me, since I sit here in the land of Troy, far from my own country, bringing harm to you and your children. And you, my aged lord, they say you once were happy, renowned for your wealth and your sons, in all the lands from the isle of Lesbos, where Macar reigned, through upper Phrygia, to the boundless Hellespont. But from the moment that the heavenly gods brought this wretched war upon you, all has turned to battle and slaughter. Endure. Let your heart not grieve forever. Sorrowing for your son will achieve nothing. You'll not bring him back to life, though life will bring you other sorrows." Achilles releases Hector's corpse to Priam. Take it Smeagol has gone home? Yes, Smeagol needs to rest for a very, very, very long time. "Do not ask me to sit down, beloved of Zeus," replied the aged king, "while Hector's corpse lies neglected by the huts. But give him back to me swiftly, so my eyes can gaze on him and accept the ransom, the princely ransom I bring. May you have joy of it, and return to your native land, since you have shown me mercy from the first." Fleet-footed Achilles, frowning, answered him, "I need no urging, old man. I have decided to return Hector's body to you. My own mother, the daughter of the old man of the sea, brought me a message from Zeus, and I know in my heart such things don't escape me, that some god led you to our swift ships. No mortal man, not even a strong young warrior, would dare to venture into this camp, nor having done so elude the guards, nor shift the bar across the gate. So don't try to move my heart further, lest I defy Zeus's command and choose, suppliant though you are, not to spare even you." The old king, gripped by fear, was silent. Then the son of Peleus ran from the hut, followed by his two companions, Automedon and Alcimus, the dearest of his friends after dead Patroclus. They unharnessed the mules and horses, brought in the old king's herald, his crier, and offered him a chair. Then from the well-made cart they lifted down the princely ransom for Hector's body. They left there 2 white cloaks and a fine tunic, so that the corpse could be wrapped in them before he gave it back to Priam to take home. Achilles then summoned 2 servant girls and ordered them to wash and anoint the body, first carrying it to a place where Priam could not see his son, lest his grief at the sight provoke his anger, and Achilles be angered in reply, and kill him in defiance of Zeus's command. When the servant girls had done washing the body, and anointing it with oil, and had dressed it in the fine tunic and wrapped it in a cloak, Achilles himself placed it on a bier, and he and his comrades lifted it into the wooden cart. Then he sighed and called his dead friend by name. "Patroclus, do not be angered. If even in the house of Hades you learn that I have returned noble Hector to his dear father, who has given a princely ransom, even of that you shall have your rightful share." With this, noble Achilles returned to the hut and sat down on his richly inlaid chair opposite Priam, saying, "Venerable lord, your son's body has been placed on a bier, and I shall release it to you as you wished. At dawn you may look on him and carry him back, but now let us eat." Even long-haired Niobe eventually thought to eat, though her 12 children had been slain, 6 daughters, 6 sons in their prime. Apollo, angry that Niobe had boasted of bearing so many children compared with Leto, who had borne but 2, killed the sons with arrows from his silver bow, while his sister Artemis killed the daughters. The pair slew them all, and left them lying in their blood for 9 days, since Zeus had turned the people to stone, and there was no one to bury the corpses. On the 10th day the heavenly gods gave them burial, and only then did Niobe, exhausted by her grief, take sustenance. Now turned to stone herself, she stands among the crags on the desolate slopes of Sipylus, where men say the nymphs that dance on the banks of Achelous take their rest, and broods on the sorrows the gods sent her. Come, let us too take sustenance, venerable lord. In Ilium you can lament your son once more, and grieve for him with a flood of tears. Oh, hello, Tori. We are almost done. Achilles agrees a truce for Hector's funeral. Swift Achilles sprang to his feet, and went and slaughtered a white-fleeced sheep, which his men flayed and prepared. They chopped it deftly, spitted the pieces, roasted them carefully, and then drew them from the spits. Automedon set out bread in neat baskets, while Achilles served the meat, and they helped themselves to the good things placed before them. When they had sated their hunger and thirst, Dardanian Priam contemplated Achilles and how marvelously tall and handsome he was, the very image of a god. Achilles too marveled at Priam's nobility and eloquence. When they had gazed at each other to their heart's content, godlike Priam said, "Beloved of Zeus, show me to my bed now, so that, lulled by sweet sleep, we may find ease and rest. My eyes have not closed since my son lost his life at your hands. Then I lamented and brooded over my endless sorrows, and groveled in the dirt in my courtyard. Now I have tasted food and wetted my throat with red wine. who until now tasted nothing. Now Achilles ordered his friends and the servant girls to set up bedsteads in the portico, cover them with fine purple blankets, and spread sheets above, and fleecy mantles on top to keep the guests warm. Torch in hand, the girls left the room and swiftly busied themselves at the task. Then fleet-footed Achilles spoke to Priam in a cooler tone. "You must sleep outside, venerable lord, in case one of the countless counselors of the Achaeans comes to sit and talk with me, as is right. If he saw you in the swift passage of darkness, he might hasten to King Agamemnon, and then the return of the corpse to you would be delayed. Now tell me truly, how long do you need for noble Hector's funeral? I will keep truce myself for that length of time and restrain the army." The godlike old king answered him, "You would be doing me a great kindness, Achilles, if you indeed allow me time to bury Hector. You know the city is surrounded, and the Trojans would fear to fetch wood from the far hills otherwise. We will lament him 9 days in the palace. And carry out the rites on the 10th. Then on the 11th day we will raise his barrow, and the people feast. If we must, we will fight again on the 12th. Fleet-footed Achilles replied, "It shall be as you say, aged Priam, and I will restrain the army for that length of time." With that he clasped the old man's right wrist to reassure him. Then Priam and Idaeus, the herald, lay down to sleep in the portico, their minds still full of thoughts, while Achilles slept in the inner recess of his well-built hut, with the lovely Briseis by his side. Brian, do you want Chinese food? If he answered, I walked away. No, I was busy reading. Yes, I want Chinese food. I have like 3 little bits left to read. If you can wait just a little bit longer, unless you've already left, in which case we can talk later. Priam returns to Troy with the body. Gods and warriors, overcome by sleep, passed the night in slumber, but not Hermes the helper, who was awake considering how to lead Priam from the ships without being challenged by the trusty guards at the gate. Finally, standing at the head of Priam's bed, he spoke to him. "Aged lord, now Achilles has spared you. It seems that, though still ringed with enemies, you sleep without a care. You have ransomed your son for a princely sum, but the one your sons will need to give will be 3 times as great if Atreides or one of his warriors finds you here." The old man woke in fear and roused the herald. Hermes harnessed the mules and horses, and undetected by their enemies, drove them quietly through the camp himself. As saffron-robed dawn lit the wide earth, they reached the ford of eddying Xanthus, that noble river begotten by immortal Zeus, and Hermes left them for high Olympus. Lamenting and in tears the 2 men drove, Priam the chariot and horses, Idaeus the mule cart carrying the bier. No one in Troy, man or woman, knew anything of them till Cassandra, lovely as golden Aphrodite, from the heights of Pergamus, saw her dear father driving the chariot, and the herald, the city crier, driving the mule cart, and saw who lay there on the bier. She gave a loud cry, and called to the city below, "Men and women of Troy, if you ever rejoiced when Hector returned from battle, come now and gaze on him who brought joy beyond compare to the city and its people." Soon the city emptied, plunged in unbearable grief. All ran to the gate, and close beyond them met Priam, bringing home his dead. Hector's beloved wife and royal mother flung themselves at the cart. Clasping Hector's head, they wailed and tore their hair, while the great host of people wept. And they'd have been there outside the gate, lamenting him the livelong day, till the setting of the sun, if old Priam had not called out to them from the chariot, "Let the mules pass, and when I have brought him to the palace, then you can take your fill of lament." I wonder what happens next. The lament for Hector. At Priam's request, the crowd parted and made way for the cart. The family led the way to the royal palace, and there they laid the body on a wooden bed, and summoned the chorus of singers to stand beside it, to sing the dirges and lead the lamentation, while the women wailed in chorus. White-armed Andromache made the first lament, cradling the head of man-killing Hector.
Husband, you have died too young, leaving me a widow in the palace, and your son, whom we his unhappy parents brought into the world, is still a babe who I fear will never grow to manhood. For this city is doomed to perish utterly, as you have perished who watched over it, and kept its wives and children safe, who will soon be captive aboard the hollow ships, I among them. You, my child, will go with me, and labor somewhere at menial tasks for some harsh master.
Excuse me.
Or worse, perhaps, some Greek will seize you by the arm and hurl you from the wall to your death, angered perhaps because Hector killed his brother, father, son, for many are the Achaeans whose mouths have bit at the dust at the hands of Hector. And your father was not a kindly man in battle. Now the people lament you throughout the city, Hector. An unspeakable grief your death has brought your parents. The bitterest grief of all is mine, because you did not die in your bed, stretching out your arms to me with some tender word that I might have treasured in tears night and day.
Such was her lament, and the women added their grief to hers. Now Hecabe took up the impassioned dirge.
Hector, Hector, dearest of me, of all my children, dear to the gods when you were alive, who care for you now, therefore, in death. Swift-footed Achilles robbed me of other sons, selling them beyond the restless sea in Samothrace, Imbros, and Lemnos, veiled in smoke. You he killed with the sharp bronze, and dragged you round his friend Patroclus's barrow, whom you slew, not that he raised him from the dead by doing so, and yet you lie here fresh as dew, as if newly dead, like one whom Apollo of the silver bow has touched and killed with his gentlest dart.
So she lamented, and stirred endless grief. Now Helen followed with a third lament.
Handsome Hector, dearest to me of all my Trojan brothers, godlike Paris, my husband, brought me to this land of Troy, though I'd rather I had died there and then, and this is now the 20th year since I abandoned my native country. Yet in all that time I had no harsh or spiteful word from you. If any in the palace reproached me, your brothers, sisters, your brothers' fine wives, or your mother, for your father was ever gentle to me like my own, you would turn away their wrath, and restrain them with gentle acts and words. So I grieve aloud for you, and in my heart for my wretched self, since there is no one else in all wide Troy who will be kind or gentle to me. All of them shudder as I pass.
Hector's funeral. So Helen lamented, and the whole crowd wept. But the old king Priam gave his orders. Gather wood now, men of Troy, and bring it to the city, and have no fear of some crafty ambush by the Greeks. Achilles promised me before I left the black ships that he would restrain their army till the 12th dawn comes. So they harnessed oxen and mules to the wagons, and assembled outside the city. For 9 days they gathered huge piles of logs, and when the 10th dawn brought light to the mortals, they carried brave Hector, and in tears laid his body on the summit of the pyre, and set the wood ablaze. Next day, when rosy-fingered dawn appeared, the people gathered at glorious Hector's pyre. Then when all had assembled, they worked together, quenching the embers with red wine, wherever the fire had reached. Then Hector's brothers and his friends collected his ashes, still mourning him, their cheeks wet with tears. They placed the ashes, wrapped in a purple robe, inside a golden urn, and laid the urn in a hollow grave, covering it with large, close-set stones. Then over it they piled the barrow, posting sentinels on every side, lest the bronze-greaved Greeks attacked them before the promised time. When they had heaped the mound, they returned to Troy, and gathered in Zeus-beloved Priam's palace for the glorious funeral feast appointed. And such were the funeral rites of Hector, tamer of horses. The end of the Iliad. Thank you to everyone for being here. I appreciate it immensely. Thank you again, Gabe. You didn't need to do that. I appreciate it immensely. this has been the Iliad. Thank you, Jackal. This has been the Iliad. If you've missed any chapters, there are already VODs up on the YouTube channel. They're unedited, and I plan to edit them eventually if I ever, sit down and just do it. And the rest of the VODs will also be put up in case you want to listen to a part again, or in case you missed a part. I'll be putting up a poll in the Discord for what the next book will be. It will either be the Odyssey, which is the continuation, or we'll take a break from that and we'll read A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. Regardless of which one we read next, the other will follow immediately afterwards. So if your favorite loses the poll, don't fret. We'll get to all of it eventually. That being said, of course I didn't mean to, I wanted to. I know. I mean, I know you didn't need to. I know you wanted to, and that's why I'm so appreciative of it. Seriously, thank you. Make Sunday evening so chill with reading time. Perfect. I'm glad. That's what I'm hoping to do for at least a few people. That's the end of the Iliad. It's been a long time coming. It's taken even longer than I imagined because of the issues with the computer, but we finally did it. Finally have closure on the Iliad. Through all the tough times of figuring out which version of the Iliad to read, whether we should even continue it, it's finally done. I hope you all enjoyed. We're going to go ahead and find someone else to rate. But again, thank you all for joining me here. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of chill fun. And a friend of mine will be starting soon. I'm going to raid him. If you wouldn't mind showing him some love. He is a newer streamer attempting to find his footing, and he's at 30 followers. It'd be really cool to try to get him to 50. You don't have to, obviously, especially if you don't enjoy the content. It's your life, your choices. But any amount of support that you show him is appreciated. If this is where we part ways, then much love to all of you. If you're here for more of my streams, I'll be streaming tomorrow with either a horror game for Halloween or with more Mahjong Monday. And then I also stream Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'll go ahead and put this in here one more time for anybody who wants to keep abreast of my schedule. But if you're here for reading, join me again next Sunday, 5 to 7. We do this every week. And we'll be starting a new book next time. So I can't wait to see you there. That being said, here's the sub-raid and the regular raid. And we will raid K-Dude. I'm going to go and eat dinner with my roommates and continue enjoying this calm, relaxing Sunday that we have hopefully created for ourselves. I love you all. I'll see you all next time. Peace.